Bienvenue, hello, and welcome. I have the video for this week, and this week we have a German novel, and it is this German novel called Two Women and a Poisoning by Alfred Doblin. So that is what we are talking about this week. But of course, before we start, remember there is a shop. We do not do Patreon. We do not do sponsorship, anything like that. We have a shop. We have a Redbubble shop. And we have our shop with our books and our writing services. And of course, our books are distributed through Income Spark worldwide. So if you are not in Australia, you can still buy our books. So there we go. And one thing, please, if you feel the need, if you enjoy the videos, please subscribe or like them. It really helps us get our videos out there. Okay, so Two Women and a Poisoning. Janice thinks she is going to have the first true crime novel. Oui, she thinks, well, she does In Cold Blood. I don't know when she's going to do that, but she is going to tell you this is the birth of a true crime novel. I am sorry to say, Janice, I have the first true crime novel. Okay, admittedly, it was written in German and it has not really had a wide readership outside of Germany. I think that this is the first English translation from an Australian publisher. I do not know how often it has been translated into English. I suspect not a great deal. So therefore, True In Cold Blood is more influential on the true crime genre. But this one came first. So, you know my enjoyment of German literature or European literature, but we haven't done the German for a while, so I thought it was about time to do one of the Germans. This is Alfred Doblin. Alfred Doblin is a lot more famous for his much bigger novel, which has certainly been translated into English many times or for many years, and that is called Berlin Alexanderplatz, which we will have a look at, but I have not read yet, so we're working up to that. It is very important German novel of the 20th century, so I do not want to rush into anything. Now, Alfred Doblin has a background in medicine, I believe in psychiatry, and this novel is based on a famous, at least famous in Germany, famous true court case wherein two women engaged in an intense, potentially erotic, but certainly intense friendship, and agree to poison their husbands so that they can be together. One of the women succeeds in poisoning her husband. The other woman attempts to poison her husband, but does not finish the job, as it were. So that is the background of this novel. It was a huge case in Germany at the time, and it gathered a great deal of attention, both from the media and from writers. Alfred Doblin is not the only writer to look at this case. In the back of this particular copy, the writer Robert Musil also has a short piece that is written about this. So what is it that made this so incredibly engaging, that major writers of the day went to look into this. And I think that part of it is that you need to remember that Germany of the 1920s, Weimar Germany, is a lot different from what we necessarily outside of Germany, especially in the English-speaking world, understand it to be. Most people's understanding of what is Weimar Germany like primarily comes from very, very niche subculture in Berlin, which we get. Is a big source from a lot of this is Christopher Isherwood's Goodbye Berlin, which we will do. Christopher Isherwood, which most people then know more as Cabaret, the musical, which people probably know mostly from the movie. So you have a image of Germany and of Weimar Republic. You have the image of the hyperinflation. You have the background of the rise of Nazism in this period. Not this early, but it is a very revolutionary time. You have the old order has been wiped away with the peace treaty. With the Treaty of Versailles after the First World War. And so this story taps into particular concerns and fears and anxieties that are running through this country at this time, which, when you think about it, what, aside from the cabaret culture of Berlin, what you have is an incredibly conservative country which has suffered an incredibly humiliating defeat in the First World War, an incredibly humiliating peace. It has had the entire social order disrupted, and remembering that the entire social order of Germany was disrupted not that only 50 years earlier in the 1870s with German unification. So there are people who have lived through some pretty major disruptions to their society, and so that is happening within living memory. Two massive changes to German identity, the unification and then the First World War and the defeat in the First World War. I mean, the unification was disruptive. That is part of the reason that there are large numbers of Germans who did not identify as Germans. They identified by the city-state or the states that they came from in Australia. That is why they came here. They came here because they did not agree. Partly, there are some Germans who came here for economic reasons, but there are a large number of Germans who came in the late 19th century rather than the mid-19th century, who were against the unification of Germany. So you have this massive disruption within the lifespan of some people in this world. So I have seen massive things, either in their childhood or in their young adulthood and now in their old age. But you have this incredibly conservative country convulsed by this. How does that relate to two women poisoning their husbands? Well, as I said, this is an incredibly conservative country. It is an incredibly conservative country, and women as poisoners is a very primal fear within conservative cultures. Because women in conservative cultures have a set role, and the female poisoner And female poisoners, think about how evocative this is. Female poisoners are remembered for centuries, if not millennia. Livia is famous for having been friends with a major Roman poisoner, is suspected of having used her services to get rid of people, including possibly the Emperor Augustus, if you read your Suetonius. Possibly getting rid of the Emperor Augustus so that her son can become emperor. Also within the Julio-Claudians, there is Agrippina the Younger, who likewise is said to have murdered the Emperor Claudius so that her son could become Emperor Nero. You have Lucretia Borgia, another famous murderer. You also have in the 20th century, in Australia, you have the woman known as Auntie Tally, who murdered people using poison. She used thallium poison, which was a rat poison. It was odorless, tasteless, colorless. It could go into food, and it was a poison like arsenic, which is a very common poison for poisoners to use, because it is, if they are hoping to cover their tracks, because it is slow working and chronic. You can low dose someone with arsenic and eventually it will kill them. Also, at this time that these women are doing this, arsenic poisoning is possible to get chronic arsenic poisoning from things like the wallpaper, from things like in the 19th century there was cheap polished cotton that was made using arsenic to make it green, and it was polished and shiny, and women would wear this dress and they would wear to ball and sweat and dance, and the dust they would breathe the dust in, and women did go home either feeling incredibly sick or occasionally died. Also, when you consider industrial laws were not terribly interested in the protection of workers, people got chronic poisoning from their work. This is not just arsenic, but many others. The women in the match factory are responsible for the first unions in England, because they were making the phosphorus matches and getting poisoned from them, because they had no clean space to eat. So they were ingesting the poison and getting poisoned from the phosphorus that they used in the matches. They won their protest, and they got a clean canteen room in the factory. So, but chronic poisonings is very common. That is how the Mad Hatter, the chronic mercury poisonings that resembled severe alcoholism and was able to be dismissed frequently as the worker having an alcohol problem, while the authorities often knew it was the mercury within the felt making process. So poisoning was a very, very major hazard of life if you were a working class person. But poisoning is also seen very much so as a woman's crime, because poisoning does not rely on physical strength. It relies on the trust of the victim on the trustworthiness of the poisoner. Now, this is why it ties into being this fear that you see so often in highly conservative country or cultures. Within a highly conservative culture, women are the primary caregiver, the primary household manager, and poisoning within food is generally the way that poisoning is done. Because women have control of the food. So you don't want to be poisoned by your wife? Treat her nice. B, maybe make your own dinner. Just a possibility. So this is a very primal fear. And Alfred Doblin, in his study, because what he was interested in is not, this is not a lurid tale of two women poisoners with lesbian undercurrents. So it could have very easily been that, and that is what the newspaper reporting, the tone of the newspaper reporting was very much that. It was playing up the immorality of these women, the monstrosity of these women, as out there they poison their husband, because that is the other side of the horrors that we find in, or that is in the stories of female poisonings, it is a subversion of the patriarchal authorities. So in this case, by murdering their husbands, they are going against and challenging that authority of the husband. Now, both of these women had husbands who were, one certainly, the one who actually killed her husband certainly had a husband who was violent towards her. They were both very unhappily married. They had no recourse to escape their marriages. They had no money of their own, no independent income. And so for them, they felt there was this trapped quality, which is when you look outside the poisonings of the ancient Romans and the powerful, often the poisonings that are committed by ordinary women are committed out of desperation, out of the fact that they are trying to protect themselves or their children from the violence of the men. It is interesting that women who poison their husbands, who take the life of their husbands in that sort of self-defense, are considered way more monstrous than men who take the lives of their wives. It is interesting that we consider women who murder, or historically, we have considered, the press certainly considered the two women in this novel as monstrous aberrations compared to if their husbands had killed them. If their husbands had killed them, there would be so many excuses given for why the husband was within reason or within understanding of why he killed his wife. So it is an interesting thing, the double edge when in this sort of murder, and unfortunately we still see within. So I hope it is changing. There is still often a great deal of sympathy for men who, a great deal more sympathy, or a great deal more excuse making. Perhaps not sympathy, but excuse making for men who commit awful crimes against family members, compared to women who commit crimes against family members. Part of this is poisoning involves premeditation. And so you, in order to poison someone, you have to really intend. Whereas men have got away with the fact that their strengths, they have been able to argue, I never really intended to do that. No, I just intended to really, really hurt her. she died by accident. It is part of the reason. The fact that somebody took somebody else's life is not a trivial matter, but somehow gender gets tied up in this. The interesting thing about this book is that Alfred Doblin writes in a style that he calls stone style. Stone style is very detached. It is very analytic. He is interested in the psychological state and the motives behind the crime, not immoralizing the crime. He is interested in creating a dense and intricate character study. It makes it a very, very fascinating novel. It is in fact a little bit more like reading psychiatrist notes about a case for court than it is reading a novel that attracts you and grabs you. And so you are forced to not weigh in sympathetically on one side or the other. He is interested in making you think, well, what does this do? What does that do? How is that a mitigating? How is that a non-mitigating? So it is very, very detached, almost cold. I would not actually call it completely cold, because it is incredibly engaging. If it was a very, very, very cold style, it would not be an engaging thing to read. But I absolutely do recommend this book. This book is very much, we get the jump on Truman Capote by about 30 years. Haha, Janice. And that is our novel for this week. I think if you read it, it will start interesting discussions. So that is our book for this week. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you feel called to, and I will see you again another time. Au revoir. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.